Dear friends and colleagues, ciao everybody. So today with this tutorial we're gonna go to check the flight time limitations, the chapter 7 on the OMA. Of course we cannot see everything, it's too much, but we're gonna check the most important rules that we use every day. Of course, for a better understanding and knowledge of the subject, please read the OMA, the chapter 7, all of it. And during this tutorial, of course, if you see something that doesn't sound right, refers to the OMA and let me know so that I can eventually check, modify the video. Just the last thing, this video is on my YouTube channel, but is labeled as private and means you're not gonna see it just visiting my channel. You need to have the link. So keep this link for you for future references. Even because this video is divided into chapters, you can see them under the video and in the description. So in the future, if you want to check only some specific subject, you can go quickly and check that. Plus, if you think it's interesting, of course, feel free to share this link with all of your friends and colleagues so that everybody can have a better knowledge and understanding of this chapter 7. Let's start. Okay, let's start with some basic definitions about a normal day at work. What do we do as a crew? So, of course, what do we do? Initially, we report for duty the moment we go to the, at the moment for the to the briefing, in the future or directly on board. And then, of course, we do have a briefing, we prepare the aircraft, and we start the real flight with the off block. As you can see here, that means the moment where we close the door, we start the engine, we start to move, then we taxi, we take off, we cruise, we descend, we taxi in, we arrive at the new parking, we put the parking brake set, we shut out the engine, and we let the people, the passengers, get off. This is called a sector. Okay, the sector is from the off block to the on block. And then, of course, what do we do? Usually we don't do only one sector. We might do more than one sector, 1, 2, 3, 4. The ground time, the time between two flights, is called transit. Okay, so the moment where we let the passengers for the previous flight to get off the aircraft, we clean, pilots prepare the aircraft again, load the flight plane, we refuel, we board the other passengers, we are ready to go again, we close the door and start another flight. And of course, we can do several flights, 1, 2, 3, 4, it depends. Let's say usually we do from 1 to 4, we don't do more than that. And at the end of the day, of course, we have some time still on the ground that we call post-flight duty until the end of duty. That at the moment is 20 minutes, but of course in big airports, like Fiumicino for example, that takes a bit longer to get out of the aircraft to the terminal. Rules is that the captain can write an email to the crew operation control and say, okay, it's 20 minutes standard, but we need today 45 minutes, so please set the end of duty at this other time. So this is mostly what we do in a day. And therefore we can identify what is called the duty period. That includes basically everything we do in a day, from the report for duty to the end of duty. Everything is duty period. But more important than this is the flight duty period. Okay, flight duty period, as you can see, start still at the report for duty, but it ends at the on block of the last sector. So the post-duty flight is not included. Okay, why is this important? Because this is the one that set how much hours we can work in a day that we're gonna see in the next slides. So the flight hours, what pilots log in their booklet. So, okay, how many hours flying you have in your experience? Which one is in all these days at work? It is only what is in this blue area, the sectors. So from off block to on block, it's what pilots log in their logbook, and it's an identify the flight hours, so the time we actually are in the air. So in a day, therefore, we have a maximum flight duty period that we cannot do more than that. How we can read this table, that is chapter 7 OMA. First of all, I remind you, this is the flight duty period from report for duty to the on block of the last sector. Oh, it's very simple, this table. You check when you start your duty period, so the time of the report for duty in local time at the base you start to fly. And then you check how many sectors you have planned on that day. And so, for example, let's say this day we have 2 sectors planned to do, and we need to report at 8 in the morning. Okay, today we can fly up to 13 hours. Therefore, from the moment we report for duty to the on block, we can be on duty for 13 hours. Of course, if we fly more, let's say we need to do 4 sectors today, is 12 hours. And as you can see, the time goes towards the day. The later you start to work, the time reduces a little bit until, for example, here it's 11, and then early morning, the day after, it increases again. So easy. Time of initial for report of duty versus how many sectors do we fly, and we check this time. But that's not enough. We have another table, that is this one, extended flight duty period, that it is used by the company for the situation where they want us to fly more. And in your roster you can see an E, echo, already in the day of the roster. That means that that day the maximum flight duty period is not based on the table that I showed you before, but is based on this other table that mostly has 1 hour more than the normal table. Not to be confused with the extension for the captain discretion. This is another thing, we're gonna see that in a while. This is simply on a planning stage, the company can plan it already 1 hour more than normal. Of course, they cannot do it every day, there is a rule. This can be done only twice in any 7 consecutive days, of course. And also there is a rule for the rest that also we're gonna see what it is more precisely in the next slides. But anyway, you know, we have the minimum rest between flights. In case a flight one day is planned already extended based on this table, the minimum pre-flight and post-flight rest should be increased by 2 hours, or only the post-flight rest is increased by 4 hours. So what it means that either we have 2 more hours of rest before and after, or these 4 hours after. Let's now to see this extension for captain discretion, what it means that the captain have the discretion to extend the flight. Let's assume that today we have planned these 4 sectors, and we saw before there is a report for duty, an end of duty, and a flight duty period. But for some reason, today we are getting late, and so instead of doing what we're supposed to do and end our duty here, our flight duty period we're supposed to last longer, up to here. But unfortunately today our maximum flight duty period, because we checked the table that I showed you before, says that we cannot work for more than this. But unfortunately with this delay, look what happens. Our flight duty period would be more than the maximum flight duty period. So what do? We don't fly, or we can fly until the end. There are rules, and one of these rules is to give to the captain the discretion to say, okay, yes, the maximum flight duty period is this, but today we can fly up to 2 hours more so that we can finish all the sector of the day. Of course, there are rules, and now we're gonna see which one they are. Okay, first of all, there are some conditions for this rule to be used by the captains. And first of all, should be avoided at home base. That means this rule, this extension, can be used only if we are out of station and we need to go back to your base. So if you are based in Malpensa, for example, and you are in Malaga and something happened, then in order to come back to Malpensa, then the captain can extend. But if you are based in Malpensa, you are already in Malpensa, you need to do some flights, then this rule cannot be used. commander should assess the alertness of crew member. Yes, it's a captain discretion, but of course the captain needs to talk with the crew and understand if they're still fit to fly these extra hours in order to go back to the base. It's a bit vague what it means, because of course there are some discussion among crew what it means. You need to talk, you need to check. Of course, I mean, the OMA just says assess the alertness. My opinion is that, of course, I ask everybody, how do you feel? Are you okay? Explain the situation. And if the captain check everybody is okay, it's fit to fly, then extend up to 2 hours. But also, very important, maybe the most important, is only for unforeseen circumstances. So something that you cannot know, you didn't know before that moment. And also ICAO specify which are these unforeseen circumstances. It cannot be everything. It's for adverse weather, equipment malfunction, air traffic delay. What it means, we are on time, we are ready to go home, back to our base, everything is fine, suddenly it starts to snow, for example, so the runway needs to be clean, you waste the time. At that point, if you take off, you go over the maximum duty period, the maximum flight duty period. In this case, okay, say, let's extend a little bit, but at least we go back home. Or for example, equipment malfunction, there is a tire burst or some equipment needs some maintenance, we didn't know before, okay, by the time we fix it, and now we are late, say, okay, we extend, at least we go back home, and stuff like that. So now let's see some practical example how to use this captain discretion. So this is the day we saw before, so we got delay, so now we will be over the maximum duty period. But if something happened at the beginning, just during the report for duty, we already know that the day is going to be very late, because for example, typical situation, the aircraft that we need to use is coming late. So we already reported the aircraft is coming in 2 hours, so you already know that we're gonna start to fly in 2 hours, therefore to do all 4 sectors we're gonna go over the maximum duty period as in this picture. In this case we cannot use the captain discretion and say, okay, we had the 2 hours and we finished the 4 sectors, because it's not an unforeseen situation and it's not to return to your base. Is at the beginning, you're already in base, so this cannot be done. So the captain needs to be in contact with the OCC and say, okay, what's the plan? What do you want us to do? Either the OCC might decide to replace the whole set of crew with a fresh one who report for duty maybe 2 hours later, and therefore their duty period is going to start later, and they're going to be all this 4 sector is going to be within the maximum duty period. Or they're going to tell you, okay, you know what, you only do the first 2 sectors, and the other 2 I call a standby crew. That could be an example. Or for example, you do the two sectors and you go back to your base. Now again, you need to do 2 more sectors. Something's happening here, and now you know that for now you're going to be late, and again, you might not be able to finish the 2 sectors going out of base and back to base within the maximum flight duty period. Again, this is illegal to do it, because it will not be an unforeseen situation to go back to base. It's already known at your base. In this case, again, the captain needs to call OCC, and the plan could be either, again, to replace the whole set of crew in that moment to do both sectors, or the crew do the other sector, this one, go out of base, go to the hotel, the other sector is either cancelled or it's going to be operated the day after by the same crew after the minimum rest, or they're going to find a standby crew at the other destination. I mean, many things can be done, but of course, at this moment cannot be used. A very, very important concept that has to be clear, because I've seen in many airlines I worked before as well, nobody had this concept clear, is that this extension for captain discretion is not a democratic decision that we vote at the majority, we decide. It's a captain decision. It's the captain who decides. Yes, after check if everybody's fit. But what does it mean is that let's assume that pilot and first officer are okay, they feel okay, no, I feel okay, we can extend. Then we have the other cabin crew that say, okay, 4, we are fit, we can we are okay to extend, we go back to the base, extended. One cabin crew only, she said, no, wait a minute, I'm tired, for me, I don't want to do this extension because I'm too tired. In this situation, it's not that the captain says, okay, in this case, we don't extend because we cannot. No. The captain might still decide, because it's all decisions, say, no, I extend the duty today. We take the flight and the aircraft back to our base. Of course, if one crew doesn't feel fit to fly, it's okay, of course. You might be tired, devastated, and everything. But in this case, the different scenario means this specific cabin crew have to report that she or he, oh, come on, okay, girl and guy, of course, I say girl here, but of course, everybody, and he said, okay, no, sorry, I'm not fit to fly. And in this case, this person is not put as a crew, so we're gonna go back to base with less than the standard crew, and that is 4 anyway for the aircraft. And of course, maybe some passengers has to be offloaded, because as you know, for each cabin crew we need 50 passengers. So in this case, we need to fly only with 200, no more than 200 passengers, and the excess of 200 passengers are gonna be left on ground, and we return with these less passengers, and this cabin crew either go to the hotel, go to the hospital, or return as a passenger. That's a decision that OCC and the cabin crew has to make based on the situation. But has to be clear, that's not as a lot of people think. A lot of people think that as long as one person, whoever is in the crew, doesn't want to extend, nobody extends. No, this is not true, okay? Rule is like this. Okay, let's take a look now at rest. What is a rest? So we have some flights, we finished, end of duty, and then we go home until we are free a certain amount of time, hours or days, until we report for duty again for another set of flight. Of course, the time between the end of duty and the report for duty for the next flight is the rest. Now, the problem is to identify which is the minimum rest that legally a crew must have before taking another set of flights. We have two cases: if we are at home base or if we are operating out of our base. If it's at home base, the minimum rest is the greater of 12 hours or the preceding duty period if it was longer than 12 hours. And I remind you what it is: a duty period is between the report for duty to the end of duty, so really everything. Okay, if this is longer than 12 hours, our minimum rest before the next flight has to be at least longer than this. But if we are operating out of base, it's the greater of 10 hours or the preceding duty period, so we have 2 hours less. But still, we need to have, including in this rest, at least 8 hours of sleep. What it means? It means, yes, we are end of duty to the next is 10 hours, but let's say the hotel is far away, either to go the day after to come back to the airport, so we need to be sure that at least we can stay 8 hours in the room where we are supposed to sleep. And that means if it's not, the captain, once he's in the hotel, call OCC and say, okay, now we are in the hotel, 8 hours we sleep, plus the time to go back tomorrow to the airport, this is going to be our rest. That is, yes, 10 hours, but can be at this point a bit more, because we must have 8 hours of sleep. Oh, then there are some moments specifically written in the OMA where, as a crew, we have the responsibility to be contacted, to be able to be contacted by OCC, by dispatch, and to check our roster. These moments are exactly 2 hours before reporting for duty. We must be contactable by phone, and also in the post-flight duty, so those 20 minutes after we block at the last section of the day, that's the moment where we must check our roster, because if there are some changes for the future days, this is the moment where we must check and we are considered to be acknowledged about any change in the future roster. So let's move on with a bit more complex subject, that is the standby. What it is a standby? A standby, of course, is a time frame during the day or the night where we can be contacted by the company to operate a flight. So in this time, from the beginning to the end, we can receive the call to operate a flight during this time, but also after. It has to be also clear, a lot of people don't know that we can receive a call to have a reporting for duty even after the end of the standby. Of course, there are rules, now we're gonna see that. But the moment we get this call, the minimum time that we have to report for duty is an hour. So from the moment they call you, you have an hour to arrive at the airport. But if they tell you, okay, no, you need to report for duty later on during the day after the standby is over, how much time can we work at this point? So there is a rule that is called the maximum awake time. The maximum awake time is 18 hours and include everything: standby, the duty until the end of duty, above all if it's after the standby. When this max awake time begins, it depends on the time. So, because between 07:01 and 22:59, if our standby is begin within this time frame, the maximum awake time begins exactly at the beginning of our standby. Okay, but if our standby is in the night, so between 23 and 07, so the rule suppose that we are sleeping, so there's no problem, and therefore the maximum awake time of 18 hours starts at the moment we receive the call, okay? Because at that moment we receive the call, we wake up, so from that moment we are considered awakened and we can work up to 18 hours. Of course, this is maximum, and of course, also the flight duty period has to be taken into account, but this is the maximum awake time. That means they can call us now, in this moment, to give us a flight much later, and so the flight duty period starts at the moment you report for duty, but the maximum awake time cannot be more than 18 hours. Okay, now things get a bit more complicated because if we are on standby, we got called for a flight. When is our maximum flight duty period starts? From which moment? Okay, we need to identify an area, a time of 6 hours from the moment we start our standby. Let's say we got a call, of course, during this standby, and we start our report for duty within the first 6 hours or our standby. Therefore, our standby is over. Of course, we need to report for duty at some point, and therefore our maximum duty period, maximum flight duty period begins exactly at the report for duty as a normal day every day. But let's see another case where we still have the first 6 hours, of course, and from the initial of the standby we got called for a flight, but this time the reporting for duty is after the first 6 hours of the standby. In this case, the maximum flight duty period still begins at the report of duty like a normal flight. But when we calculate how much is today our maximum flight duty period, we have to reduce this amount by this red line. That means the excess of time between the first 6 hours and the report for duty. Therefore, today our maximum flight duty period, although it starts at the report for duty, is not going to be as for the table, but a little bit less. Less how much? How much is this time between the first 6 hours and the report for duty? But to make things even more complicated, there is another rule that says if the standby starts between 23 and 07, so basically in the night where we are sleeping and therefore we are resting somehow, this time between 23 and 07 don't count until we are contacted by OCC. So my understanding is that all of this graphic about the first 6 hours and this red line that has to be reduced, basically you need to shift from the moment OCC calls you. Of course, it's not super clear how it's written. The OMA simply say don't count until contacted from OCC. So what I understand is that basically, so it doesn't count, therefore you need to move everything from that moment, and then the 6 hours start from there, and therefore you have to reduce your maximum flight duty period only on the red line, that is from the first 6 hours, but the moment they call you, because between 23 and 07 doesn't count. Let's see now what is the reserve, these new things that has been introduced recently in our roster. We didn't have it until last year. It's a kind of standby, but it follows a bit different rules. So let's presume we have a roster like this. With day 1 we end a series of flights, 2 and 3 we have reserved, and then day number 4 another set of flights. So as I told you in the slide about the responsibility, at the end, before the end of duty here, we need to check our roster, because we might have roster change in the future. And this is the moment where, for example, the roster can assign to us a flight during the reserve the day after, and that's perfectly okay. But what happens if instead they call us during the reserve? Because you remember, during the standby, if we get a call for report for duty, the minimum time on notification is 1 hour. So in 1 hour after the call, we need to be at the airport. In this case, instead, the notification period is 10 hours. Okay, so they can call us in that time frame, but the flights assigned have to have a reporting time of at least 10 hours, okay? Of course, following all the rules of minimum rest, off time, whatever it is. So change to duty. What can change on our future roster, on our flights in the future? Okay, destinations and number of sectors can always change, but the time of the report for duty follows specific rules. To understand that, we need to create 3 moments. That is, one is 24 hours before the report of duty that we have been notified before, and 10 hours. In this case, we create an area, this green area, that is 24 hours before our next report for duty. So our report duty can change whatever they want, anytime, anything can change basically. And then between 24 hours and 10 hours from our next report for duty, the report for duty time can change, but only in a way that we're going to see in a moment, so not anytime. And then we have this red area, so 10 hours close to our report for duty. So the time of report for duty cannot change unless it's for unforeseen operational situations that also we're going to see in a moment. So which are in this yellow area, so between 24 hours and 10 hours, the change in the time of the report for duty that we might see in our roster. The report for duty can be delayed, but 3 hours only, or can be put earlier, 2 hours. Okay, so the dispatch might request us to report for duty 2 hours earlier. But of course, in this case, this yellow time that ends at 10 hours before the report for duty, of course, also has to shift 2 hours. Okay, because we still have to have at least 10 hours of margin between the moment we are notified that our reporting time has changed to the new one. So let's see some practical example of how these rules of change to duty apply. So we have this situation, a series of flight, end of duty, and then some rest time. So this is day 1, day 2 and day 3 are off, and day 4 we have another flight with the report for duty. So as I told you before, we identified this area, this green area, 24 hours before the report for duty, where any change can be made because it's within 24 hours to the next report for duty. So let's see that we are in this moment where we are ending our flights, our series of flights this day, and we are notified in this moment that something happened in this day number 4. Our roster is changed completely. Is 24 hours before, okay. We have the responsibility, as I told you in the slide about the responsibility, to check the roster in this moment, and therefore this change to duty is okay, is legal, we cannot refuse. But let's assume that, for example, we got a roster change on a day 2, on a day off. It is still within 24 hours, so it's illegal for dispatcher to change your roster. But it's not that you have the obligation to acknowledge. So this is something that has to be very clear, meaning they can propose to you a roster change because it is within 24 hours. You can check and you can also acknowledge because maybe you like this new change because somehow it's more convenient for you. But you have no obligation to acknowledge. So the dispatcher should not expect that because it is 24 hours before your reporting, you must acknowledge. Because your phone must be off. As we saw in the responsibility slide, you must check your roster up to the end of duty and 2 hours before the report for new duty. Anything between, you might be wherever you want it on a phone off, and therefore you might not even know that the roster is changed until 2 hours to the report for duty when you have the responsibility to check. But at that point, 2 hours is less than 10, and therefore the change cannot be done. And therefore this one is not okay, meaning is knee. As I told you before, dispatcher can propose you a roster change, but they should not expect you to acknowledge. Therefore, after some time that they see that you haven't acknowledged, they should cancel this roster change and give you back the original duty. So we have seen that 10 hours before our reporting time, in that red area, reporting time theoretically cannot change. But of course, our job is very dynamic. There's a lot of things that might happen. Above all, a lot of unforeseen circumstances might happen. And therefore, our reporting time can actually be delayed, as we say here, delayed reporting for unforeseen circumstances in flight operations. Now, of course, the definition of unforeseen circumstances in flight operations is given to interpretations, but anyway, that means if we have a flight and we have a report for duty, this report for duty can actually be delayed sometimes in the future. There are rules, of course. The first rules is that the notification has to be at least 90 minutes, okay? So we need to know 90 minutes before the report for duty. That is the reason why, as I told you before, 2 hours before the report of duty, we must be contactable from dispatch, keeping the phone on, checking our roster, so that they have these, let's say, 30 minutes up to these 90 minutes to call and to tell us there is an unforeseen circumstances, and therefore you have to report for duty a bit later. How much later? And above all, the new maximum flight duty period now, how is calculated? Because now we are reporting for duty a bit later, so we start to work later. So it depends, because if this delay is less than 4 hours, then we keep the original reporting time for the calculation of the maximum flight duty period. That means in that table that I show you in the slide number 1, where we have the time of reporting and the number of sector, even if now our reporting time is delayed, we enter in this table still with the original reporting time, and therefore our maximum flight duty period is still the same as we reported for duty at our original time. If the delay is instead more than 4 hours, in this case we need to check which one of the maximum flight duty period is more limiting. the one that we calculated entering the table with the original report for duty, or now we enter in the table at another time because we are later. Let's see which one is more limiting, therefore less time as a flight duty period, and now that one is going to be our new maximum flight duty period. So the positioning, what is the positioning? It means that when we have to do some flights during the day, but we don't start to fly from our base. We need to either go to another place before starting to fly, or come back to our base after flying. And how we can go there? By aircraft as a passenger with another flight, either with our company or another company, or by train or by car. And the problem is again how we calculate the flight duty period and the duty period in case of positioning. Let's go to see. So let's start to see the case of the positioning by air before flying. So we need to do a couple of sectors today, but not starting from your base. We need to go somewhere else and then be operating crew. So initially we have a flight as a passenger. In this case, our report for duty is an hour before the departure of that flight. And this flight doesn't count as a sector. In the table of the maximum flight duty period, we still need to check 2 sectors and the time of the report for duty, not 3 sectors, because when you say sectors, it's only the one we are actually active crew. So in this case, the end of duty as per normal. So after the sector, we have 20 minutes of post duty and then the end of duty. The flight duty period, therefore, is from the beginning of the report for duty until the on block of the last sector of the day. And the duty period instead is from the report for duty until the end of duty as normal. If instead we position by ground before a flight, and therefore by train or by car, in this case the report for duty starts at the time of the train leave or the car pick you, wherever it picks you. Okay, there is no any time before that. It's exactly the time where we start to work. Then you go somewhere, then you do the sectors you need to fly, and then as usual there is the end of duty after 20 minutes after the post duty. In this case, again, the flight duty period is between the report for duty until the on block of the last sector of the day, and the duty period is between the report for duty and end of duty. If the position is after flying, so you report for duty as normal in your base, then you do some sectors and then you finish your duty in another seat. So you need to go back either by aircraft, by train, by car, whatever. In this case, it doesn't matter. It's always the same. The end of duty doesn't change, meaning there's no post duty. The 20 minutes is not such a thing. So when the aircraft land, when the train arrives, the car stop you at the back to your base, that is the end of duty. And therefore, the flight duty period in this case is from the report for duty until the block on the last sector. In this case, the positioning after flying doesn't count as a flight duty period. Remember, it counts only when it's before flying. But the duty period, yes, take into account everything, of course, between the report for duty and the end of duty. And this is important to calculate the minimum rest, because as I told you, the rules are all the same. The minimum rest is either the bigger between 12 hours or the duty period if it's bigger, and therefore it counts with the position. It takes forever to go back to your base. That's the duty period. Then you have to have a minimum rest starting from the end of duty. That is this one. From here you have to have a rest that is at least longer as your duty period, or 12 hours. Okay guys, so I hope now everything is a little bit more clear. Of course, there's much more in the OMA, but this is the most important rule. If you have enjoyed this tutorial, share the link to your friends and colleagues. If you have some more doubt, write comments or stop me when you see me. I might find a way to help you. And of course, so enjoy flying. Let's have some fun still, although the flight might be long, the day is long, and enjoy the summer. and see you around on board. Ciao!